Good morning. It's 8 o'clock and we're at the intersection, and it's so good to see all of you. I'm wondering if there are any announcements today. We're just dying to.
And I have an announcement.
Oh, do you, Doug Beach?
I
Yes.
do. Thank you for asking. We are about 4 weeks out from the 10th annual Pathways to Hope Conference. Registration is free. This year we have a special conference on Saturday. It's a special portion of the conference for youth, but it's youth and adults. And so I hope everybody will register. The link is in the chat, and we hope to see you there.
Great. Do you have any idea what registrations are today? I'm always the one who asks that. I like
Yeah,
that build up, knowing numbers.
yeah. Oh, as of yesterday morning, it was just over 600.
Wow. That's good. That's really good a month out. Yeah. So yay. I hope everybody here is going and telling other people about it. As Doug said, it's no cost, but it's open to everybody in the community. So clergy, counselors, navigators, grandmas, grandpas, young people. And even though there's a focus on Saturday towards young people, anybody can go to that as well. And in fact, there are parts within it for people who work with young people. And so um, I think it's the best conference we have in town. Uh, Usually somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000, the number is in there somewhere. And it's at the beautiful Tobin. So if for no other reason, it's a beautiful place to go to a conference. So any other announcements at 8:02?
I'm going to put the sacred newsletter in the chat, and that'll give everybody keep updated with sacred if you're not receiving the newsletter already. So that way everybody will get it.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Well, I want to give, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Mario's here. Although I still want to give people time to get into um, the meeting. Just checking here. So maybe I'll just kind of give my update and a little bit of more intro. So Paul Furukawa was saying when he signed in early that he was glad he hadn't fully planned my retirement party because the date keeps changing. So, but which is true. And it's part of why we're gathering this morning and with Mario as well. And so my last day, and I feel pretty official about this, but is the last day of September, which is the last day of this fiscal year for the city, which runs October through September. And there are several reasons for staying until then, but one of the major reasons is that we're in the budget season. And within the budget, the faith-based initiative is one line item, right? Which is this position. And as you've probably heard or might guess, with some educated guessing, the budget is going to have some reductions this year. Kind of that influx of ARPA dollars, the COVID stuff, that's kind of done. And we're also living in a different context nationally. And so there are going to be some reductions. And we already know that. But it would be easier for a line to be crossed out if there weren't a human there. It just is easier. And as many of us know, coming from within the faith community, sadly, but sometimes in institutions, like a good example would be a hospital, the chaplains, that lots of times one of the first things to go when there need to be reductions might be the chaplain's office. You got to have people cleaning the place. You got to have those doctors and nurses, and right. And so it would go to an all volunteer system kind of thing. Chaplains and clergy will continue to visit and family, but so that can happen. So that's part of the decision. There's still some loose ends that I'm going to work on. So that's another part of the deciding as well. But that's one of the main reasons. And so it kind of brings us to this morning and why I invited Mario. Mario is that chief guy over government and public affairs at the food bank. Normally, in our conversations across these years, in terms of community and collaboration, we're really using a very large scale community organizing model. And I know you're all aware of that. We talk about that all the time. But within that model, and Mario is a part of that from a different direction, a different vantage point. His work is directly with, elected officials, with people on staff. And he obviously does a great job because we have, the best food bank in the country. So he's doing his job. And I invited him to come and we're just going to talk, and you all can also interject with questions and thoughts. But from his vantage point in this kind of window of time, we've been in the budget season for quite a while now, for months. So there's a lot of, the surveying and that kind of filters itself. And then they're like looking at it over and over again. And then in August, which is just around the corner, that goes out into community. And there are community public forums where people can come in and talk about it. And then that's voted on in September so that it's ready for October 1st. So we're in this very little window of time on July 24th before it goes into that public kind of conversation. So there's still time. And this would apply to any concern that you might have in the budget. So we're just going to really be using this particular work as an example, and I hope you help with it. But anything that you might be concerned about within the city, or that it's important to you that's in the budget, these same kind of processes would be helpful. And I just think hearing from his vantage point would be helpful to all of us. So, Mario, thanks for saying yes. And I'm going to put this on speaker view. And so I'm just going to let you kind of begin, Mario, because we've already started the conversation, right? When I called you on the phone. So the conversation has started. I kind of brought everybody up to speed. So, where are you in this conversation now? And what have you been thinking? What could we be doing, individuals as a group, in terms of moving our budget?
Yeah, thank you, Ann, for the introduction and then just the background on the issue itself. And good morning, everyone. Good to see you all on the call. I do handle government relations here for the San Antonio Food Bank. So within our 29 counties, that's city, county, state, and federal, connecting with elected officials and government officials and staff to create awareness around who we are, how we work, and how we help. And when you called me the other day, and I'm losing track of time because everything's been a blur the last few weeks, right, with everything going on in DC and then our flood response. But I believe I was driving from Comfort, Texas. I had just left Comfort. We were having a disaster distribution up there for some of those families, and Senator Cornyn's staff joined me out there for that, and they volunteered to get a gauge and a pulse of everything going on in the community. And then I was heading down to Karnes County to go visit with the county judge and one of our commissioners down there on our programs and services. So lots going on, and the call was very timely, Ann, because I had been thinking about you recently because I knew that there was the retirement possibility, and you had been on my mind. And so you have done a lot of great work since you've been in the role, and it's very vital work. And so today's conversation around city budget process, how to get involved, what's happening, I think is very timely. So I will say, Eric Cooper, he's our fearless president and CEO, and without his leadership all these years since 2001 or so, we wouldn't have the best food bank in the country. And he has grown this program, this food bank, and the outreach to many families throughout 29 counties. So I do want to acknowledge that. But yes, vital time right now, critical time for a lot of folks, not only nonprofits, but families and individuals within the city of San Antonio, 10 council districts, right? And as Ann mentioned, the dialogue has been happening for some time now. There is a break. The council has had a break this month, but they'll be coming back pretty soon to pick up the budget dialogue again. And that is getting out in the city, in the communities, to hear from residents on what priorities are important to them and what they would like to see stay in the budget or be added in the budget. So you do have that opportunity to go to these meetings. They're generally in the evening. They're spread across town within all 10 council districts. The council member will call that. You can get all this information that we're talking about on the city website. So sa.gov. If you go there and under the budget, sometimes they have it front facing on the front page, but you'll be able to access not only the survey, but when those council town hall meetings are going to be taking place. And I encourage everybody to look at that and to go to your council district town hall when it comes to the city budget. For us, and as I mentioned, everything's been a blur, right? The last few weeks. And Eric Cooper was on this call recently talking about the budget tax bill that was passed up in DC and signed into law on July 4th. And then on July 4th, the same day, the tragic event up in the Texas Hill Country and San Angelo and up north of Austin in terms of the flood, loss of life and infrastructure, just that impact. So our sister food bank in Austin, the Central Texas Food Bank, has been responding up in their service territory, and we've been responding in ours. We do cover Kendall, we do cover Kerr, we do cover Tom Green. So all those little townships that you've been hearing about on KSET when it comes to not only San Angelo, but Hunt and Ingram and Kerrville and Centerpoint and Comfort. We've been responding to those families. And a lot of people have from across the country and across the world been convening up there to provide not only volunteerism, but support in way of food and water, and then also recovery efforts as well. And I was in Austin yesterday, actually, out of that tragic event. The lieutenant governor and governor created during the special session, created the joint committees on disaster preparedness and flooding. And so the first committee hearing was yesterday. It was 12 hours. I drove up to Austin early in the morning and sat in that committee hearing for a few hours to really listen to Nimkid and Tatum's presentation and Q&A afterwards with House members and state senators. And we have a few folks on that committee from our delegation. So we have Donna Campbell, we have Senator Perry, who's the chair. We have Senator Flores. We have Representative Verdal is on there. But Jose Menendez has known us for a long time. He's on that committee, and so he's a mainstay for us, Senator Menendez. But in any event, getting back to the city budget, for us, we participate in the process, meaning that we do go to city council. We monitor the activities. I go to the budget meetings in the evenings, usually for District 6, because the food bank is located in District 6. And so the council members, now Rick Galvan, but before that, Melissa, and going back to Greg Brockhouse and going back to Ray Lopez, for all these years, we've had some great support from District 6. And so I generally go to those meetings and just encourage them to keep us in the budget. We have a few funding streams in the budget for Project Hope, for also when it comes to the general fund, but for Haven for Hope, we run the kitchen there. So 3 meals a day for that population. And then we are part of Ready to Work SA, which, as we all know, was born from Mayor Ron Nirenberg's leadership. So we try to advocate for our funding streams to be protected and look for opportunities to grow funding to be able to help those that struggle to put food on the table. And so I do know that this coming Monday, Rick Galvan, Councilman Galvan, and also the mayor will be having a town hall on just priorities and what is important to homeowners and residents within the city of San Antonio, but within District 4. So actually, Edward Munguia, excuse me, Edward will be having that meeting. Rick Galvan and the others will be scheduling theirs, and that information should be out there for y'all. When it comes to Ann Helmke and your work all these years, I refresh my memory. The position was created in what year?
It was approved on the budget in 2016, but it went into effect 2017 fiscal year, which would be October of 2016 is when it began. And then there was the posting of the position, and that all takes time. And then I began in February of 2017.
2017. So, and as I asked you recently, I was trying to remember which council member was advocating. I knew it was either Ray Saldana or Chris Medina, and and so you clarified that it was Ray, and Ray was a great council member in District 4, and now he's up in Washington, D.C., but he flies back and forth as he's head of community schools national, so across the country. Ray stays pretty busy, but his heart and home is still here in San Antonio. And I remember when all that dialogue was happening on the creation of your position, Ann, and when you look at your position, faith-based, when you look at that for civic engagement and for communities, you have local government, you have business, you have families and individuals. Faith is a part of community. And when you look at the national level, the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives, so that is always tied into the White House, and whatever president's in office can use that as a tool to engage the faith-based community across the country on various topics and issues. And then they advise the president and the administration also on priorities when it comes to faith-based initiatives. But when you look at TDEM, Texas Department of Emergency Management, and Nim Kidd was giving his presentation yesterday to that committee, and he mentioned churches and faith-based as part of strategies when a natural disaster happens or man-made disaster. They rely on faith-based communities when it comes to volunteerism, when it comes to support in local communities. They know that the church in a town or a rural city or even an urban city, congregations are very strong in terms of membership and are able to mobilize and help out in a variety of ways. So he did acknowledge that. So I wanted to just frame that because when you look at the faith-based initiative and the position, and that you've held for all these years, when you look at federal, state, and local, to me, I think it's a vital position, and I couldn't see the city of San Antonio without it. I know if former Mayor Ron Nirenberg was here, he would probably say the same thing because compassionate work, Compassion City USA, everything you've done around that initiative with the help of Mayor Nirenberg has advanced a lot of education and advocacy in our community, and I think has made a great impact when you look at our residents and certain issues. Years ago, and I remember after you got in the position, you started to work in the community on a very grassroots level around hunger and homelessness issues. And you targeted District 3 because a lot of homeless folks were coming up into San Antonio into District 3 through the I-37 corridor, but there was a lot of issues around, and I just passed one of them day before yesterday, the closure of the Walmart neighborhood grocery stores. And so food deserts started to become prevalent. And then you had the homeless population coming in to San Antonio, and maybe they weren't aware of Haven for Hope. And maybe there wasn't enough work that we were doing with respect to food pantries and other resources. And I remember you got engaged with the food bank and started asking us questions. We started to identify our partners for you. You had community meetings. There was dialogue. Other council members were taking note, and they wanted to have the same thing, same efforts done in their council district. And I remember Councilman Greg Brockhouse getting engaged as well, and others at the time. So that's very significant work. And I think you made great impact. And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Ann, but that's kind of where Sacred came into play too, in terms of creating a map, if you will, of all the resources and nonprofits in the community and making that information available to families and individuals so they can access programs and services. And so I want to acknowledge all the work that you did there. And so when you look at all that work, myself, I can't see the City of San Antonio Department of Human Services without an Ann Helke, without that position. And so for us as a group, I think it's a vital time to attend these council town halls, budget town halls, and advocate to keep that position within the city budget. Now, we know that there might be some cuts coming from, and I don't want to speak for my friends at the City of San Antonio, but the city manager and other leadership have been looking at, budget shortfalls possibly for 26 and 27, looking to see where they can cut back in city departments, looking to see where they can gain revenue to help support with the coming years because of all the uncertainty that has come out of Washington, D.C. in the last several months. And that's having an impact on localities across the country and budget streams. And for us here at the food bank, y'all have seen and heard about USDA and other federal agencies cutting grant opportunities that have impacted us from accessing food and nutrition. Truckloads of food coming to our warehouse have been canceled. So our sister food banks, Feeding America, the 200 across the country, and Feeding Texas, the 20 here in our state, have all been working together to try to convince our lawmakers in Washington, D.C. And the administration not to make those cuts. But that is having a great impact on what we're looking at here in the city of San Antonio. And I think for your position, I think that that it is a vital time to rally the troops and to advocate to keep it in the budget.
That was concise. I've been taking some basic notes of what you're saying, and I'm going to just in chat. I was listening to your process and what you do as a model, going out, meet people, gauge what's happening in the community and its pulse, nurture relationships and make connections, which I misspelled, participate in the process. You got to be a part of it, be present, give encouragement to others, the dialogue, the value that is in the faith community, utilize reports and resources, etc. One of the things that I noticed when you were talking, Mario, is how much information you also gave, like what counties, how much, how many. And you also, gave names of people that you have relationships with and who you're talking with and dialoguing with, right? Partner with others in strengthening, that engagement, which makes me think of peoples and groups like Cops Metro. They work hard at working together in terms of that engagement and be intentional and create that strategy. One of the things that I wanted to add to what you were saying maybe a year and a half ago, the faith liaison, who's with the Department of Health and Human Services in DC, who some of us know here because Ben Odell has been here before, and he's also been at the intersection. But he started to gather together state level and city level faith liaisons in a monthly virtual meeting, and most of which has been a sharing of what we're doing, things that are going well, that kind of thing. And but this past Tuesday, so just 2 days ago, he invited somebody from the faith office at the White House. And that was the first time we had that kind of guest in the meeting. So I'm going to pass on to everybody the basics that I heard. According to the representative, this is the first time historically that the faith office is physically located in the West Wing. I have thoughts of why that is and what that might mean. But we all know that proximity makes a difference. So not only I think there's value in the faith community and what we're able to do, because every sector of the faith of our city, of our community, every sector is there in faith communities. So when there's conversation in a faith community, you're hitting a lot of different sectors, right? Education and business and health. And so, and we have always talked, and I'm glad that we have, that the faith initiative falls within the Department of Human Services. So that has really focused our work on the service.
Good. I forgot my badge though. Can you badge me in? Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, it's at my desk.
Whoever that might be, you might want to mute your mic. So, but now I think there's also another reason, not that it wasn't there before, but with the faith office moving into the West Wing, at least our federal government, we know, is giving focus there. And so I think there also needs to be that kind of awareness, right? So human service, the 3 foci that she told us, I'm going to have to look this up. For some reason, I can never remember the first one, that the faith office at the White House is working on is freedom of religion, marriage and the traditional family, and anti-Christian discrimination. So, so that's kind of my update of what's happening there. And we all know that what happens on the micro level impacts the macro, and the reverse is also true, right? What happens on the macro level also impacts the micro. So what happens local impacts national and vice versa. So I'm also keenly aware of that movement and what that means to this particular office within our city structure. So at 8:29, I'm going to give a thought out here in a minute, but I want to take a brief pause for any folks that might need to leave and get on with your day. But thank you for being with us. And of course, we will be back here next Thursday at the intersection. And I really have been kind of traveling lately, almost from one week to the next, because I want to make sure that our at the intersections are as timely as they can be in a time that is a high level of transition. Who doesn't want to know what's really going on, right? And all levels. I mean, we've got the national stuff, and we've got our own transition of new council, new mayor. We don't know yet what directions they really want to take, even though we've heard a lot, right, during the campaign season. But what does it all really mean, right? So I'm trying from one week to the next to be as on top of things as we can. So if you have any thoughts about how on top we could be next Thursday, let me know, and we'll work in that direction. So back to our conversation. One of the thoughts that I had while you were talking, Mario, and so I'm just using this example of the faith-based work in the city structure. I think one thing that could be helpful, and I'd be willing to work on it, but is like a one-pager on some basic information of what has happened within the community faith-based initiative among all of us mutually, what has formed, some of those numbers, that so people, when they organize or individually decide they want to make a next step, that people have some of those resources that they can talk about beyond just, we've done some good work, right? So I feel kind of charged to do that. So that's going to be my action step after today. I'm going to work on that and send it out to everyone at the intersection so everybody has that tool and can use it however they want. I know, so I'll give an example, but maybe I'll invite Dr. Junda Wu next week. She's our medical director, and we've had her on here before. She's also in Compassionate USA and one of the video recordings, as well as Ray Saldana. I just think she's amazing. I think she's one of the reasons we made it through COVID as well as we did. She's brilliant as well. But last week I got a text from her. I'll see if I can find it real quick. And she had been to some meeting or whatever, and I get a text and she's like, "Say it isn't so," right? Which was so sweet about me leaving, right? And she wrote back. And so I think I'll even try to put in some quotes into that one pager of people that are elected officials, city staff might appreciate hearing what that value has been, right? And she wrote back, people need to know about the trust and vast network that we built during COVID. That is the part that public health still needs to live on. And the network she's talking about is the one that was created with the faith community to get information out. And we did a lot of work and utilized Sacred for where those congregations are and where they could have clinics. And so from her vantage point, that is still needed and was very instrumental at that time. So I think I'll also include some of those kind of things. So then people could even follow up just with Junda, like they could ask from her vantage point. So I don't know. What other thoughts do people have of what we could be doing? Questions for Mario? Even Mario, what thoughts you might have? Might even include specific people. I don't know that we might. I don't know the new council persons well, nor the mayor yet. But I don't know. What are we all thinking about our movement forward and our mutual work?
I was going to just throw something out there, and I did text Ray. I stay in touch with Ray Saldana, and I was going to mention this call, and so I was thinking maybe at some point you could have Ray on this call to speak to the group and to kind of give that history on when he was advocating for this position and what his thoughts would be today. This conversation right here, I think Ray could really lean in and provide some great direction and insight. And so if you want, I'll try to see if we can get him on one of your next calls.
Yeah, if you touch base with him any Thursday morning.
I'll start working on that now. And then the other thing with the new council members, with out of the 4, right? So you look at Misty in District 9, and you look at Evilise in 8, and Rick over here in 6, and Edward in 4. The unique thing is they're all former staffers at the county or city level to council members that have been involved for some time on community issues. So I think they have a leg up. I really do. I think they're going to be great. They've been out here to the food bank before. So for my advocacy work, I'm far along now because of those folks and those friendships. But then with the mayor, who's very sharp, and I know that she's, as I mentioned, she's Monday. She'll be with Edward, having their community meeting in District 4 to try to get more feedback from residents. I think she really wants to listen and learn. And then with her sharp mind, I think try to make some impact on not only the budget, but also the quality of life for the residents of San Antonio. That's one thing. And then I don't want to take up too much time here, but I will say this. I've been working with other GR staff at other entities in San Antonio, and we've been meeting and communicating on our issues that might be one and the same that maybe we never thought about. So we've been pulling resources and advocating together up in Austin or in Washington, D.C. To try to make some inroads, to try to make some impact, and to learn from one another what organizations are doing. But someone's clients could be our clients, and we don't realize that. And so how can we work together? So that's been happening, and I encourage folks at nonprofits and other organizations to band together with others, because we've never seen what we're seeing now coming out of Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. So.
Mm-hmm. It also made me think of within Ray Saldana's work and what you had mentioned, because he was the council person who brought it forth into that dialogue in the council, and being a city management form of government, then they said let's look at doing that. And then city staff researched, half a dozen to a dozen cities and how they do faith, that component. And then they kind of discerned what was, the best process for our context. And that went then into a proposal. So this is also this is how our city process works. And that was voted on by the city council and then put into the budget. And that all happened in 2016. But what led Ray, as I understand the story, what led Ray to bring it forward were 2 to 3 clergy in his district. That was the impetus. They went to him and said, we're out here. We know what's going on. We could work together and you'd have a better idea of what's going on out here. But just to see that whole process and how the impetus in it came from 2 to 3 people, talking.
That right there is golden. That
right?
history right there in that story, I think, is what's needed to be presented to a council member or council members, the mayor, the manager. So during this process.
Oh, I'll put that in the one pager. Paul, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm going to a meeting today of COPS Metro clergy. And one thing I can do is make sure they're aware, Ann, of what's happening to your positions. So hopefully that group will become a little more interested and concerned and get involved in this as well.
Great. But that's part of it too. Not everybody knows that this even exists. I mean, we tried to do our very best, but even the council persons, but we don't know exactly, right? Or how much they know. One of the things that's happened, and then Alice has her hand up, one of the major things along with Sacred, it's part of Sacred. And when Mario, you were talking about that engagement in District 3, that was during the early days of Sacred. And what we did was really like gap mapping, right? So we were able to overlay the police department hotspots with where there were food pantries, and Sacred did that. And what we noticed is that where the hotspots were, the majority of phone calls going into the police department, there were no food pantries there. And so quickly we put food pantries in those little, hotspots. And those numbers, those calls started to change.
I remember.
And, but what we've also developed in all of this is a directory of congregations, and it was just revised again. And we've had some time here where we've shown where that's at and available to the community in Sacred. But, Ray had 2 to 3 clergy talking to him. But now that district, as well as all the districts, have a list of most of the congregations and their points of contact available to them. And they did not have that before this initiative in the city budget. Alice with sacred.org.
Hello. As you've been talking, it made me think about, yes, advocating for the position to continue and to continue to let people know that it's here. And also learning about the faith liaison. You said there's in the Department of Human Services. That's the State Department. What was that one?
The one that spoke on Wednesday was in DC, right?
Okay, that they meet every Tuesday. They do Tuesday meetings.
No, once a month.
Oh, once a month. Okay.
Faith liaison, state level and local level meet.
Okay. That one, I know DFPS has a faith liaison. Just learned about the COPS Metro and all these others. Just to get to my point, number one choice would be to get your position with an equally wonderful, I don't know where we're going to find one person to continue the work, but transitioning that to a who, and if not possible, then to a where. And I don't know if you've had these thoughts like, well, over here maybe they might be able to continue it, keeping the history, knowing the history of this group, the strengths and the mission of it, and then the how. Just my brain is going into transition mode about how can we keep this and let it raise capacity and let it continue to live in a way to move it forward, so that it doesn't, because that's what happens so much. I've seen it happen so much that there's this wonderful initiative. And, we have dreams of retiring. We have dreams of spending every day with grandbabies and just hugging.
Stop.
I don't have any, so I'm very jealous. I have puppies. And so, all of that, but as a community, we can't let it just disappear because the individual has stopped. We need to make sure that we as a community continue that and grow it, and let it grow where it'll grow. It maybe not have to be in the city if that's impossible, but it can be someplace, and to know that it's always going to be alive somewhere. So just kind of throwing it out there, it's like, where can we look for other transitioning possibilities?
And that has been a part of the conversation, even in the city, and even within the city. Is it now? And we, in those conversations, it's really about taking this initiative like to the next step. Like, what would that be? And would that next step be, like better placed in Metro Health? Or, like exploring those thoughts. And yes, it could be in community. And we've talked about that a lot in terms of how the community really needs to be leading this, right? In partnership with the city. But the faith community should really be, leading our elected officials, because they do know the community and helping them out, right? So, making those explorations. What I loved about what you said, Alice, was raising the capacity. How do we take it to the next level and raise the capacity? And one thing I do want to say is that we have a lot of people, a lot more, I think, than we did 8 years ago, but a lot of people who could step into this role today. And I think stronger, and each would give their own kind of course, it would be different no matter who that is, right? But we have people out there now, some who are right here in this room, that might not have ever thought about doing this before. And we can have many people doing it, right? how wonderful would that be? If we had those like connectors all over the place and doing that kind of thing. Martha Ann, and it's 8:44, so I want to keep us aware.
Click on the link that I put in the chat box. As we think of what we can do together, we can do a gigantic amount if we work together. And I want you to think of the overall idea. Hatred is a contagious and destructive disease. So locally, nationally, internationally, how do we collaborate and build the positive?
Mm-hmm. I also just thank you. So true. And we had a major conversation about that in the fall around Israel and Palestine and how hatred was, a health concern. Recently, and I think I'll sign off with this, but recently somebody sent me the Dalai Lama's 5 steps during high levels of stress and collective suffering. And I have listed them in chat, very basic. I mean, it was a whole article, but the first step was be prepared. And I would say that we've been preparing for this moment in time, right? And maybe we'll start next week. Doug Beach gave me a perfect story yesterday about people who went ahead and just kept doing the great work that they were doing, no matter how things were changing around it, and how hopeful he is more than ever, right? Because of it. But, to be prepared whenever the time comes and put that to work, but also then to step back and see it, the whole picture, because you can just drown in the weeds of it. And so Mario, like when you go out and you were gauging the community, and that's part of the process. Step back and see what you can see systemically and what's going on and how we can make a difference. But these are the points that I love. Choose optimism. And I know I can claim it myself that I've not always been optimistic in some of the last months. But that choice of choosing optimism and how that even can make a difference of how you're seeing things and how you're moving forward, and appreciate the successes. Look to what has happened. And so we did some of that this morning. It wasn't planned, but that was great to be able to say, look at what we've been doing. This makes a difference. Hearing Dr. Wu's words, that makes a difference. And then, never lose faith in humanity. So I think those are wise words to go with. Very simple, but very concrete steps that will really make a difference, I think, during this window of opportunity that we have with our city. And so I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for working so hard together. Thank you for your commitment into the future. And thank you for always being willing to take the next faithful step. So have a great day. Have great weekends, and I will see you next week at the intersection.